Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. Man, I just got done recording that episode with Pasha Esfandiary, and I'll tell you, there was just packed with value here. So we talked about a lot of different things. First, Pasha wrote a book on poker and how that, how we can learn from poker and apply that to business and in life, and so many lessons. And honestly, it was interesting because as I read the book and had the discussion, so many great analogies. Pasha tells a lot of stories, how he framed his mindset, why he worked for free. He talks about a crutch that's really personal that became an opportunity for him. He talks about how he puts people first and what that has turned into for him, both in poker and in his business career. He explains to us how we often misunderstand risk and how we should really look to size up risk and make big decisions, and just the filter he uses for big decision. He has a great poker analogy for that. And finally, just how to find the right game. How can we find the right poker game, but how can we find the right game that we're playing in life and business and personal? I really enjoyed the discussion. I think you're going to as well. Check it out. Pasha Esfandiary. Pasha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Phil. Thanks for asking, man. I'm excited.
How did
I
I do, Pasha?
You did great. You did great. I was waiting for you to mess up my last name, but you did great. You crushed it.
I butchered it. I butchered it just a minute ago. So I tried my best. So I'm glad we pulled it off.
Yep.
We're in for a treat today. First of all, this is Pasha's a great guy. I've met him. It's been a few years. We've hung out a few different times and talk about someone that's doing well in the different phases of life, especially business, but family, young kids. As he says in his book, and he talks about the happiest guy he knows. A little bit about Pasha. So he's the CEO of Evoke Capital. He owns and manages over 2,500 units, large majority being mobile home parks. His business has a people first philosophy. And if you know Pasha like I do, you can just see that come out. Author of a new book that just came out, Raising the Stakes, Professional Poker Strategies for Winning in Business and in Life. And Pasha, I love poker. And my family doesn't like to play poker with me. That's the last thing I'll say about that. But no, it's honestly, the book is phenomenal, especially if you're into poker. But even if you're not, just a lot of great life lessons from it. So well done on writing the book, and just a lifelong committed to learning and mentorship. So Pasha, I want to start. Just tell me about your story and how did you become who you are?
Yeah. How long do we have? I mean, that's such a loaded question. And I'll take it more so in kind of like the business sense of the things that you kind of reiterated a second ago about, personal development, mentorship, people first philosophy and all that. Immigrated here when I was a young kid. My father came as a single father to me and my brother, and raised us. Essentially, he worked the kind of immigrant lifestyle, 2 jobs, putting the food on the plate for us. So me and my brother really kind of had to raise ourselves. That wasn't a fault of my father. That was just a kind of a necessity of the times, really. And so there was this really intense drive that I think both my brother and I had, and we both exercised it differently. We saw what my father had to give up back in Iran to move us here. We really had everything you can ask for in Iran and moved here. And we had to start all over, right? My dad had to start all over. That's a really big ask for anybody, but my father did it, being the man that he is. Did really well in school, but hated school personally. It drove me insane. Fast learner, but couldn't, concentrate. ADD. Liked video games, all that. Became a big video gamer, especially towards the end of middle school and all of high school. Right after we graduated high school, I knew college wasn't for me. I didn't have this grand plan or anything. I just said this wasn't for me. Started working some jobs. In 2004, my brother had won a poker tournament, and he won $1.4 million. And he didn't tell us about it, but we knew he was a professional poker player, and I was finding my path still. At that time, my brother retired my dad, which was awesome. And then I said, at the end of the day, just being a cocky kid, I was like, well, if my brother could do it, I could do it. And I started playing poker. I started playing poker with my friends, and I just quickly got really good really quickly. Only because of my video gaming background. You essentially have to do what the other opponent doesn't want you to do. That's the whole motto, right? And I became not like this plan that I had, but I just became a professional poker player. I was making way too much money playing poker. I quit my waitering job, moved to Texas, into Houston, and just started playing all the games. And I started traveling around the world playing cash games everywhere. And I did that for a very long time until I was 26 years old. When I was 26 years old, I had just moved to Vegas. I was sitting at a poker game and I just realized, like, I remember finding myself hoping to get lucky that like some fish would come sit down at my poker table, right? And I said, this is stupid. I don't want to hope. I don't ever want to put myself in the position that I want to hope that somebody gets or try to get lucky. And I said, I'm going to go make my own luck. Got into real estate. I've always wanted to be in real estate. Went did an internship for the mentor I told you about when I was 26 for free for many, many months. Long story short, loved real estate. Flipped my first home in Vegas. Made all the mistakes. Made $3K net pre-tax. But got the bug, flipped a bunch of homes in Vegas, close to about 40 to 50, including JVs. Moved to LA, started doing land up construction development, bought a motel along the way in Vegas, got into multifamily, got into mobile home parks. And then just to touch on the people first thing, I've always just been a people person. I really loved people. One thing I have noticed, though, that what set my brother apart in poker and myself was that we were never, ever deceiving or lying in any way, shape, or form, which brought us a lot of good faith with a lot of people. Your reputation precedes you in poker. I have seen time and time again, because of reputation, to be the ability to borrow $1 million, $2 million in an instant at a poker table based only on reputation, right? It's insane, right? And I've been able to do that too. So reputation was always really important, and always having the hard conversations, always being fully transparent. Never, and poker is such a world of deceivement,
right?
And then you're the breath of fresh air that is, everyone knows exactly where you stand, and you're having, hey, listen, this happened, and you're just having these conversations and being fully transparent. It was ingrained in me, in my college tuition, being poker.
Interesting. There's a lot there. So I have like 4 things that I want to come back to. So first of all, I guess I'll say, if you don't like this question, we don't go here, then we just cut this out. But you talked about ADD, and I just, you talked about it openly in the book as well. So I just want to ask that, like, did you see that? How do you see that? Has that been a crutch for you, an opportunity? Like, how do you think about that now?
This is such a great question, and no questions off the table with me. ADD for me was this thing that I knew I had as a child. And I remember even telling my father, Dad, I can't focus. This is really stupid, but back in the day, and it's also revealing my age, there was these books where you could stare at, and then there's another image behind the patterns, right?
I was horrible at these. I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. Everyone was able to do it, but I couldn't do it because my mind.
I see nothing here.
I see nothing. I never saw anything. So I was like, Dad, I really do have ADD. And he wasn't listening to me. He's like, no, you just need to focus more. He was, a professor at a, Iranian university. And it was very strict about, no, you just need to focus more. It's your fault. And I was like, this really is, an issue here. And so it was a crutch. I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I was younger. I was a poker player. I had no college education. And I really held myself back from putting myself in positions to succeed because I was so embarrassed about not going to college or not being able to get that college education as others would. But what ended up happening is, as I got older and I started getting more confidence in what I was doing, and I hate to say it, as I started becoming more successful, I started to give myself those self-affirmations of like, I always evaluate, why was I successful, or what went right. What I started to really understand is, because of the way I was able to scale my business so quickly and make decisions so quickly and get to where I was at, was in part because of my ADD. Because I could see the big picture, I can make decisions quickly, and I'm always looking to scale. So it turned and morphed into where it is now, where I see it as a superpower.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And I think, I think for anyone, whatever anyone's crutch might be, or whatever they, if they have imposter syndrome, which I might ask you to explain a little bit more, but are these things to hold us back, or opportunities and blessings that we can take advantage of? We just have to figure out why and lean into more. And I'm not saying all of our challenges are that, but I do think how we frame these challenges is extremely important to our outcome, whether that's like external outcome or internal outcome. How does that resonate with you?
It does. I'll give an example, right? So when you become a CEO of a company, you have to constantly evaluate your employees and putting them in a position to succeed. And some people have just innate ability to succeed in different positions, right? I'll give an easy example. Someone who loves people and is better as a salesman, and someone who's analytical is better at the Excel spreadsheets, back end stuff, right? Like, but the thing is, I think as I grew up, and in poker as well, you have to understand what you're really good at and maximize what you're really good at. And then you want to minimize what you're bad at. It's like an NFL team. If an NFL team's really good at running, they're going to want to maximize the running game, and then they're going to want to minimize the passing game, but use it as a tool. And I think when you look at it in that sense, it's really powerful to understand what you're really good at, and then let's maximize and build on top of that potential of wherever it can lead you, right?
Yeah.
So, but the harder part is that if you don't do this personal development work and willing to take a hard look at yourself and be super authentic with yourself, it's a hard pill to swallow, given our society is not built to allow you to have faults, right? Or deficiencies.
Yeah. I have 4 things to go back to, but I want to stay there because you talk about in poker, and this is so important. I heard a leadership coach of mine say before that the number one skill to be developed is self-awareness, is build your self-awareness of yourself. And I think the more you read, the more you network and associate with others, the more you just observe it and learn about others, you learn about yourself. And you said at the poker table too, that it's so important. In your book, you talked about it's so important, yes, to learn the table and understand others. But if you understand others but don't understand yourself, you're not going to be the best poker player you can be, or the best business person, or whatever it is that you want to be. So tell me more about self-awareness and how do you build your self-awareness, I guess?
Let me give you an example about playing poker. If you're not whole yourself in the sense that you're playing the best game, having your guardrails set up for yourself as a poker player, being the best that you can, maximizing your strengths and minimizing your deficiencies and your leaks, as we call them in poker, leaks being things that make you lose money, not play optimal poker, not make you play your A game. What ends up happening is if you play enough poker, the way I like to look at it is that the variability in the math of all the poker tables are all going to be the same. I mean, there might be different people, different names, whatever, but at the same end of the day, people are going to play how they're going to play. It doesn't really matter, but if you're always changing who you are and changing up things because of how they're playing, which you need to do. This is just a nuanced argument, but you're never going to be a successful poker player. You're never going to be successful at anything that you do because it's like the airplane analogy. You have to make sure you're whole first to then take care of others. So the self-awareness is really being able to expand in a field in yourself or in potential in yourself. So that way you can grow what you need to grow. I have 2 partners that I'm growing this company with. And again, self-awareness is I can't, nor do I want to do what they do. And they don't want to do what I do. And so it's just knowing ourselves to be like, no, I'm not going to be good at that. What's our best chance of success? Well, you go do this, or Edmund or Alex, you go do X.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is as a business owner, business leader, manager in a company, whatever it is, if you can understand strengths and weaknesses, it's not okay. Work on your weaknesses. That's one way to say it, but also identify other people that are strong in areas you're weak. The other thing you touched on that you hit on in the book is you talk in the book about the term is just the lifetime. I think it's lifetime expected value. And you're making all these bets and moves, fold, call, raise, whatever it might be, based on the lifetime expected value of making that. If you make that move 100 times, you're going to make money on it, maybe only 55 times, right? But not 45 times. You're doing the math, and there's all kinds of math and pot odds behind this. But the point is, you're making these bets. And I think what's so important in poker and in life is you're making these bets, but you have to understand it was the right bet. And independent of the result you get, you made the right bet. So you just need to stay consistent with making the right bets based on the lifetime value. And that could be money or other relationships, anything.
That's correct. I've definitely have lost a lot of money at times, right? Amount sometimes that would make people cringe. But at the end of the day, I gave the odds about 70, 72%. And even though the outcome was a failure, as people perceive, I would have done it again because the odds are in your favor. The best example that I can give is that if you play perfect blackjack with a single deck and you're the house, you have a 51% edge, even if you, the opponent, plays perfect blackjack, plays perfectly without counting the cards and all that. That 2% edge over 1,000 hands is massive. Over 10,000 hands is enormous. Over 1,000,000 hands is astronomical. And so we're always doing these things in life and business and relationships, health and whatever it is that you always want to add the odds in your favor, I guess is the best way to put it, right? And that stacks on top of itself. And so whenever you keep putting yourself in a good position to succeed when the math is in your favor, you keep doing it. People are so risk adverse from making any loss in their life, they don't typically take a risk in the first place. And that itself is the bigger risk, in my opinion, to not take a risk. So,
yeah, I love that. And I think what happens a lot of times is, first of all, I think knowing the outcomes and the odds is important to make the right bets. But then again, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. So just understand that and take the risk. And again, I love the comment that the biggest risk is taking no risk at all.
Yep.
What might happen though, if we don't understand this well, is, we make these bets, whatever it might be, they don't go as planned and we get overly emotional about it or we go on tilt. So tell me what is, by the way, I learned in the book, I didn't know where the term tilt came from until you explained it.
Yeah. So this is what I've learned from poker is that, and what's really helped me out for success in my life, about really anything. Poker really trained me to be a very logical person when I make decisions. I am an emotional person by nature. I'm very sensitive. I was probably a little bit more sensitive as a kid than most. So I'm a sensitive human being. But when it comes to business and money, there is zero emotions that get attached to it. I've just learned from poker that when you start putting a dollar value on your chips, you're already going to lose. Okay, so you're making an emotional attachment to the chips on the table. You're going to lose because now you're making decisions based on the money and not what is the correct poker play. Now, to expand on that is that what I've learned time and time again, it's called tilt. So if anyone is playing in an emotional state in poker, and poker is such a metaphor when you sit down on the poker table for life, in my opinion, your character comes out, your personality comes out, your risk comes out, your risk profile and the way you like to play and how you like to do life, it comes out of the poker table. It's really kind of a really cool analogy for life. But at the end of the day, even if someone is super happy and drinking and having a good time and celebrating, they're not going to play optimal poker. If they're coming in with a bad day and they're pissed off about something, they're not going to play good poker. If they're pissed off about the other hand and they're trying to play catch up because they just lost a hand by a bad beat, they're making the wrong decision. So if you ever allow yourself, this goes back to our other analogy that we were talking about, you have to make yourself whole, that if you don't manage your own emotions and tilt, you're not going to play optimal poker. And anytime you're not playing optimal poker, you're giving edge away to other people. And so it's all about checking in with yourself. It's about managing your emotions at the poker table and then setting guardrails for your emotions. And this happens in business and relationships and anything, right?
And what I heard there too is that how you show up to the table, how you show up to work, or how you show up to home, these different areas of life impact each other, right? So you're checking in on that. Like if your health is completely out of whack or you're not exercising, you're not getting your sleep, whatever it might be, you're going to show up to the table not in your best shape, right? Or if you have a horrible day at work, you're probably going to show up at the dinner table at night, probably in best shape too. So these areas of life also support each other.
Yeah. Poker's so funny because I do remember, and he's a buddy of mine, Jason Kuhn. He's one of the best poker players out there. He's just an absolute monster, one of the best poker players out there. And, when I was coming up in poker, nobody was healthy. There were some healthy people, but poker players in general, like legit poker players, were not healthy. The hours are terrible. You're eating junk food all the time, drinking a bunch. It's just a terrible, terrible lifestyle. And I hated the lifestyle of it. But my buddy Jason Kuhn kind of stormed into this, into the scene. And he was healthy and talked about how being healthy was like why he had an edge over everybody else. And then every poker player started getting healthy because everyone in poker is always seeking edge. This is the thing about poker players that I love that others don't. is that we're always seeking edge over our opponents, and everyone's our opponent, right? Like they don't know it, but subconsciously everyone's our opponent. So we're always trying to seek edge. How are we trying to, it's like optimizing, but always in business and in relationships and anything, how do we gain edge? How do we get better? How do we optimize our life? And so, that's what I love about the poker player kind of tuition, I'm going to call it, is because you're always trying to optimize something. You're always trying to improve something.
Yeah, that's such a great example. And just these areas of life supporting each other. And that's a perfect example. And then also there's, Jason just comes in and he's an example of that. And all of a sudden, he's having an impact on just making people healthier because he's just showing up that way. So, and I have some other poker things. I don't want to give away everything in the book. You're going to have to check out the book, get it yourself, but we'll probably come back to it. But there's two things you said in the intro. First of all, you talked about a mentor of yours. You worked for him for free for several months. I forget the exact timeline, but tell me the thought process behind that at, I think, a very young age to have the maturity and kind of mindset to go do that when you probably also were really hungry to make a buck, I assume.
Yeah, it's lifetime EV, right? So one thing I talk about in my book as well too, I always say this, I have this ability to just delay gratification, everything in my life. So everything I do, no matter what, Phil, is for my 10-year self to thank my future self. Basically, whatever I'm going to do is I'm making a decision for 10 years from now instead of satisfying my short-term need, right? So back then when I was 26, and poker teaches you this because you have to make the right decision over the long run. You have to, what's the best long-term decision? Now, when I was 26, I know I needed an education on how to do real estate flips. And so, I flew out to LA. I was living in Vegas, and I just gave my time away for 3 months, and I just picked his brain for 3 months, and he was teaching me everything. And I did anything he wanted me to do. I did it, and I stayed longer, as long as I could. I stayed till about 8 p.m. every single night working in his office. One reason because LA traffic was terrible, but I was always putting in the work because I knew I needed that education. I will defer short-term payment and money and lifestyle for what I'm going to need in the future, right? And so that education was the key piece for me to start my real estate career. And then along the way, just kind of learned through the process, started flipping, started building a business, and then do it elsewhere and keep growing. But that's what really catapulted my career.
Yeah. And I can't imagine the lifetime EV on that decision there, just to say, hey, this is this successful person that you have respect for. I assume you're generally aligned on their values and what they stood for, to learn from that individual. Oh, yeah. I mean, the financial return, I'm sure it's an asymmetric curve. I mean, but we so often think, okay, how do we just bump up the money we make immediately? And then like society would say, bump it up, make a salary, flatline it, versus you're thinking long-term, how do we make this exponential? And it's not just investing dollars, exponential growth. That's not what we're talking about. It's your mindset and learning that created the exponential growth.
Yeah. The person who goes in like in a 10-year time span, dollar for dollar, the guy or the person that goes and studies for 2 years in that aspect and becomes an expert and then has 8 years to build on top of that. Right. Instead of the person that just starts and starting getting like experience from there, I think the person in the beginning for the education for 2 years is going to crush.
Yeah. The other thing you said in the opening, which I love, and I just from knowing you, is that you brought a different perspective. You talked about the gentleman that brought the different approach to poker being health, but you brought something fresh and new that was called just doing things the right way, building trust, building credibility, not for the sake of that, but just, I think, because you're just naturally, you're a good person and you're probably raised on those beliefs. But and I think there's so many, and honestly, it goes back to your last point. First of all, it's the right thing to do, but it's also a 10-year decision, not a today decision, right? It's just, I think more for you, I'm sure it's the right thing to do. But tell me how that approach, people first, just being authentic, being real, how has that impacted your business?
I mean, okay, so let me just connect the dots there with what you said. So first of all, I've always just been a people person. Like I just love people tremendously. I would just always, it's that kind of been in me, being very generous and being, authentic with everybody. But it really was drilled in by my brother. When I first started playing poker and I was telling him I want to start playing poker, there were situations I would get in because like when you're playing for money, you see the worst in people and you see the best in people. And when people are put in weird spots with money, because poker, there's a lot of weird spots you're in. And what I mean by weird spots is that, like, I'll give an example. It's like, all right, you play poker. It's like, no, that you crossed the line with the money. It's in. Like, and then they're like, no, I wasn't. I took it back. And now they got information. It's like, well, no, you did that. That kind of feels like it's angling, or, you know, something looks a little fishy and you're like, no, that like looks a little fit. Like there's always these weird spots that you're in.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And I would call my brother, like, you know, the first time it happened, he goes, Pasha, here's what's going to happen. He said, there's a lot of shady people in poker and a lot of people are going to always angle. Always take the high road no matter what. And he goes, just trust me on this. And I don't really understand what he meant by it, but it came innately to me and intuitively to me. Like, okay, he goes, sometimes you're just going to have to eat it. You're going to like, even though someone's angled you or you don't feel like you know, that don't feel right, or, you know, and then you make a lot of bets with people and they perceive it differently and they're like, no, you lost. And it's like, no. Actually, the intention was you lost. And so you see the worst in people. And he said, just always take the high road, just eat it, pay it, whatever. And he goes, it's going to be really important for your career. And I took that to heart, to always just being fully transparent and being like, always asking coach, like, hey, look, this is my interpretation of what happened. You tell me what your interpretation was, and let's find something in the middle. Or honestly, it's not that big of a deal. You take it. And I've been in spots, Phil, where, you know, it's been for like 6 figures before, and I just ate it, even though I feel like it probably was more their fault. But again, my brother always drilled into me, just do the right thing. It'll come back to you in spades, and never, ever, ever give anybody a reason to ever doubt your intentions. And that has been drilled into me. And the result of that has been, like I've been telling you, I've seen people be able to borrow millions of dollars on the beat through somebody through reputation. In my career, when I was coming up in real estate, I found these deals all at once and I needed $1 million, like fast. And I made one phone call, borrowed $1 million. And I was like, hey, do you want collateral? Do you want document? He goes, Pasha, what I know about you, I remember it's still crazy to me. He goes, I know you'll be more stressed about this money than I will. And here's what I'm borrowing it from my brokerage account. He goes, I pay 6% on this. Whatever you feel is fair to pay me back on this on interest, do it. I don't need a document. And if you never pay me, I'll never ask you. I'll never bring it up in my life. But I know you, and you'll be more stressed out about it than I will be. Yeah. And he wired it the next day. No, nothing, Phil.
That's incredible. And I think there's 2 parts of this. I think the trust and credibility and the long-term EV and all that stuff is true. But I also think for someone and for yourself, taking this approach, I think is extremely freeing. It's extremely, I know what I'm going to do. I know I'm going to have a clear conscience no matter what. There's not even a gray area. I think this is also extremely freeing for you to say, look, I'm just going to do the right thing. I don't have to, there's not decisions to make. There's not things to run filled. Like it's just, I'm going to have a clear conscience no matter what.
It makes things easier. I'll give you an example. I get this asked a lot by bigger investors about, hey, do we have anyone who's auditing our funds? And I say, no, we're too small still. Our funds aren't too big. I'm not paying $50K to do it. But you can look at everything that we have. We're fully transparent. You can look at all of our actuals. You can look at all of data, look at anything that you want. You can do a deep dive. It's all available to you at all times. You know, we have nothing to hide. So we don't need that $50K expense, but it does build a lot of credibility with operators, in business. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at in my real estate career if it wasn't for that reputation.
Yeah. The other thing that I think that it really it resonated with me, because I think if I think to my career, my real estate career, my business career, whatever it might be, the risk, you know, I thought about it in different ways, but the risk of being blinded off. So explain what blinded off is in a poker term, and how I think so many people are being blinded out in life, unfortunately. And talk to our listeners in case this resonates with them. What can they do about it?
Okay. So if anyone knows anything about poker, or you may not have to know a lot, but let me paint this picture for you. So you're in a poker tournament, and in a poker tournament, you have a finite amount of poker chips, and you have to use those chips to accumulate all of the chips in the poker tournament. Now, the beautiful thing about poker is that it's kind of a game of life. You're going to get dealt cards, and everyone's cards mathematically is going to be about the same, but sometimes you have variable and variance, you're going to run better and whatnot in the short term. But if you keep getting bad cards in the tournament, and through time, the antes go up. It's an analogy for life. As you get older, the antes are going up, right?
Yep.
And if you never make a stand, or if you never make a play or aggressive play perceived like as a risk of risking your chips in the tournament, even with bad cards, you're going to be blinded off by the antes. And you're going to ante off so much in the tournament to get to the point, if you keep waiting and only waiting for good cards, your chips are going to be so small and so low that somebody with a bunch of chips can use almost any cards. That's kind of like the analogy of the, people always talk about how the rich get richer because they have more money because they have more tools, they have more ammo, they have more chips to play with. So decisions become easier for them. But if you never make that jump from, hey, I might have bad cards, but I got to make a play here, you're just going to be blinded off. And unfortunately, in my opinion, most of the population, that's kind of their MO.
Yeah. And I think, if you're listening to this and you're like, I wonder if I'm being blinded off, I'll say that I think, Pasha, it's money. We can, life gets more expensive. So it's harder to take that risk from a financial perspective. But there's also other fears, right? So fear of loss of money, but what will other people think of us? Will our ego get in the way? I have this identity or title, whatever. There's other things in addition to money that we're kind of, we have a bigger title, so there's more expectations or whatever it might be. But honestly, it's frustrating for me to see because there's so much potential. I mean, if you're listening to this, you've probably been studying, you're probably reading other books, like you have potential and don't get blinded out.
Here's a really good thing that I will tell you. I think people overestimate the downside risk. Let's say there's somebody who has a little bit of money and they're thinking about buying an investment property or flipping a home, and they're just stuck in analysis paralysis. With all the things that you said, what if I lose this? What if, people think that I'm a loser? All of these things. What if I lose my home? People overestimate and put too much value on the perceived risk comparatively to speaking to where they can end up going. Now, what I mean by that is we have some basic human needs, which is like a roof over our heads, food, shelter. And I would argue that most people who listen to this is not, I don't want to generalize everybody, that most people who listen to this that take a risk in their life to lose a little bit of money and may, not be able to afford something, they will at least have a backup or a family or friends where they will be able to have a roof over their head still, and they will be able to have meals still, and they will get their basic human needs met. And even if you can get another job, same thing. So, sorry, let me backtrack. And if you quit a job to go take an entrepreneur adventure, you can go get a job again. So really, the basic human needs are still met. And that's what I mean by, I think people overestimate the risk factor of taking a risk. But then the potential, in my opinion, is asymmetrical. It just leaps and bounds overweighs the actual risk of you doing something like that.
And I think it's way harder to understand. We think about the downside, but it's way harder to understand the upside because you can't connect the dots forward. I love the quote from Steve Jobs is, you took if I mess up the story, but you took I'm going to go work for somebody that I'm not going to get paid for several months and I'm going to not make money. And man, that's what could happen? You just imagine all the risks associated with that you can really, I'm not going to have a place to live. I'm not going to have a car, whatever it might be. There's all these fears that our mind is trying to solve for us. But even though you had the wherewithal and understanding to go do that, I still bet you didn't understand at that time truly where it would take you because it's so hard to understand the complete upside of what you might do and what you can start to do as things grow and compound. And this relationship leads to that relationship, or this knowledge leads to that knowledge. So there's so much education in taking the risk that we don't understand. We have to have the courage to act on it.
Yeah. I will say one more anecdote on this is that I always tell this embarrassing story because, it's easy to look at people who are in a position that they're already successful and be like, man, they had it all figured out. They had some grand plan. Let me tell you how I started out to go and buy my first home. This is before the internship that I did. I went in. I was like, well, I want to buy that house. There was a house in Vegas that I was like, that's a house I think I want to buy right there. I just went and knocked on the door. And I said, hey, is this house for sale? He goes, yeah, there's a for sale sign. I remember this guy came out. My buddy was with me, Bo. And I'm like, yeah, I want to buy this house. He goes, do you have a broker? I'm like, no. He goes, are you approved for a loan? I'm like, no. He goes, kid, go get a broker. Come back later. I had no idea. I just walked up to the door to the owner. I want to buy this house. But then I was like, oh, I need a broker. Who's the broker that I know? Hey, broker then asked me, are you pre-approved for a house like this? I was like, no. How do I do that? And it's just, you just learn, I put myself in a very embarrassing stage, but I just said, screw it. I'm going to go do it. I don't really care how I look.
Right.
Because it outweighs, those people will never be around 20 years from now. It doesn't matter what people think of you in the moment.
Right. Well, I love that. Just that. I mean, again, I'm passionate about that because I think your phrase of overestimating the downside and just underestimating the upside and where it could go, because we really don't know either. And the downside is much easier for us to focus on it if we get, what we focus on expands. So the last thing I want to kind of ask you about is then, okay, maybe we're sitting here thinking there's something else out there. There's something else I should be doing. I want to be doing. That could be real estate. That could be a business. It could be a different role in our career, whatever it might be. Maybe it's in our personal lives, but we're trying to find the right game to play. How should we think about that? And I'm sure you'll bring in the poker analogy to that too, but how should we think about that in business and in life?
This goes back to what we were talking about earlier, maximizing what you're good at. I think, I think that where you start to really succeed and really enjoy life and what you do is really matching and fusing who you are naturally with the position that you want to do, right? I love people. I love customer service. I love bringing a smile to people's face, making them feel special. So naturally, I love being in investor relations, right? Because I really love taking care of people. I have a really good friend right now. He's going through a journey of, he's in the wrong seat at a company. He loves the company, but he's in the wrong seat. He's not super detail oriented. He's really good with people. And he's just going on a journey of, hey, what feels good, right? He'll write out big pros and cons, do personal assessments, do whatever. He's made it a mission to go talk to 10 entrepreneurs that are going to give him 10 different pieces of advice. And he's starting to learn. You just have to start somewhere. I promise you, I can't lay out a plan for you on what game is really best for you, but you really want to figure out what you are naturally good at and then have that be fused into your career or entrepreneur career that you want to do. That way it doesn't feel like work. That way you're not going upstream. You put me in a position where I have to crunch numbers all day, which I did in the internship, and I wanted to shoot my brains out, but I still did it, but I still would never choose that as a career. I think too many people pigeonhole themselves to thinking they have to do one position where they don't. Partner up, find somebody else that could do it, or have a consultant, or you have to learn it, but you can outsource it with people that you trust. You just need to really be put in a position where you're going to naturally succeed.
Yeah. And you kind of said it within all that, but just something you're good. What are you good at? What are you passionate about? I mean, what's what's really natural and authentic to you is really a simple way to say it. What just feels right. And going back to, are you being blinded out or not? If what you're doing feels right or not. And just to Pasha's point, just you don't have to have it all solved though, but just kind of start to take some steps and move in that direction.
Yeah. If you love animals, don't go be a banker. Just this is the great thing about living in the States and living kind of in the world that we live in, is that there's so much opportunity everywhere that you can really fuse what you really love to do in life and monetize it somehow. You can use ChatGPT and say, hey, this is what I like. This is kind of naturally who I am. And give me some ideas and then see how they feel. And if it's 10 no's on all these things, well, at least you have more information of 10 no's to get to the yes of wherever you want to bid. So there's no right or wrong or right path or selecting the right game. You just have to fuse who you are naturally with the position.
Pasha, I promise the episode title will not be "If you love animals, don't be a banker." But I do love that's funny stuff right there. Pasha, if you step back and reflect, a couple closing questions here. But if you step back and reflect, how does what you do? How does it make you feel?
I love what I do. I honestly, absolutely love what I do. I've always been kind of a lone wolf. I've never really had a job except for the internship. I mean, there was like a day I worked at Jamba Juice and about a year at Papa Murphy's, but I never had a job. I was just always a solo entrepreneur. Like I played poker for a living and I did all my own flips and my developments and all that. But as this grew, this opportunity grew, I really love the position that I've carved out for myself. And I absolutely love my team. I feel a sense of responsibility for everyone's happiness inside of my company. And I love what we're doing at Evoke. I really, really do. And I love where we're going to be 10 years from now. So it's fun. And I'm building a business with some of my best friends in the world, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you get to pick and you get to choose like who you get to do this with, how you design the company. I love that so much. And if you talked a little bit about like the next 10 years and looking ahead, what do you think is going to be your biggest key to your success moving forward?
So this is really a fun question because it kind of hit me just recently. This may be a few months ago. Everyone's like, hey, what are your big goals? Like, what are you going to do? Because everyone knows I'm very goal oriented and I always have a big vision 10 years from now. I was like, we got to a point where we've done all the things that we needed to do at Evoke Capital. And it's just now stacking on top of whatever we built. There's nothing, I don't need to reinvent any wheel or anything like that. So it's just keep doing what we're doing, which is a really cool place and a really cool feeling to be in, to just keep doing that. Now it's obviously always comes down to getting more of the right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
Really pouring more into our people, but just doing what we're doing. And then as we're doing that, we're starting to notice more opportunities are starting to come our way. And we're starting to get to the point in our company where we can take on a little bit of a bigger challenge because we have the infrastructure. And so I'm really excited of where Evoke Capital is going to go. I have some really, really big plans for this company. And I know we'll get there. And so I'm excited about that.
That's amazing. I love it. And the fact that you've been able to put yourself in that type of position. Congratulations, Pasha. If there's a book, podcast, whatever it is that you would recommend that's really been impactful on you, what would that be?
Think and Grow Rich and Die with Zero. 2 books that I just kind of live by. Think and Grow Rich has really helped me powerfully manifest everything I want in my life. Really taught me that you can train your mind subconsciously to get to what you want. I'll give a perfect example. It's like, if you write down and jog down, I want to make $100,000 a month, right? And let's say you're just making $5,000 a month. What's going to happen is if you write that down and over and over again, repeat that in your life and repeat that in your brain subconsciously, you're going to start looking at life differently and you're going to start hearing things differently and you're going to start seeing opportunities differently. Yeah. And when you do that, then you're able to take bigger risk because you're like, hey, if I'm really committed to this goal, I'm going to take a bigger risk, right? Or you could do what I did. I was like, I scaled it up to a certain point while playing poker, which made me go play bigger games with, and taking bigger risks, and it worked out. Then the other one was Die with Zero. It's like, I think I was so caught up intellectually about with my ego, about what goals I want, net worth and all this. And then Die with Zero was kind of like this accumulation of, why are you working so hard? Like life is meant to have fun and enjoy. Yeah. And so fusing, it's such a powerful book to make yourself ask really powerful questions about how you want to live your life. And
agreed 100%. Yeah. And I mean, Think and Grow Rich is a classic. I highly recommend that. And Die with Zero, I read that maybe 2 years ago, but it just, I love the way you framed it. It makes you really ask these thought-provoking questions to yourself and ponder like, why am I doing this or why am I doing that? So those are 2 great recommendations. Pasha, this has been absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, you can, like Raising the Stakes, Professional Poker Strategies for Winning in Business and Life. Buy it right now. Get on Amazon or wherever and check it out. Also, give him a 5-star review because he did an absolutely fantastic job on the book. The other thing I want to say, Pasha, this is just, I appreciate it. Tell us more about you, what you're doing, Evoke Capital. How can people find out more about you? Because, and I'll just say this, like from my lens, I can't give advice on anything, but I've had a great experience. I'll just say that. So tell us more about Evoke.
I mean, very simply, we're a mobile home park, mobile home community, private equity, little firm. We find really secondary tertiary market properties. We're not doing anything that's different from everybody else, but I do think we do everything very transparently. We're a lot more conservative in our underwriting than others. And we utilize the European waterfall where basically we don't get paid anything until our investors get paid back 100%. And so I think we have a really unique kind of way about us. And I think this is why we have so many referrals, and we really have a huge wait list for all of our deals. But it's just, again, back to the reputation thing, fully transparent. I get put on the spot. I don't love like self-promoting myself, but yeah, if anyone wants to go to our website, evocapital.net, you can learn all about us, or you can email me and we'll jump on the call together.
Thanks for that, Pasha. And again, thanks so much for just the wisdom you brought to this. I love the book. I'm earmarked it. I all kinds of notes, and I particularly liked it because I know, like, I passed the first test on, we have annually a Moeller Maverick poker tournament, and we call it the best. I told Pasha before, it's the best poker tournament known to man within like a 2 or 3 mile radius of where we live, which is also a very small town. So if my cousins are listening, keep coming at me, but you still got work to do to study. I got Pasha mentoring me here. So all jokes aside, Pasha, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate our listeners, the support you've given us, whatever platform you're on, giving us a review, subscribing, whatever it might be. We just appreciate it. Pasha, thanks so much.